Yeah, the traffic lights are just really to do with the travel theme. I don't think there was anything more to it than that. And I remember us highlighting the amber light as if to say we're getting ready to go, but it's not quite go yet. It's not quite green light yet. That was like the feeling. But I think the traffic light thing just came from the train thing and the whole travel theme of the album, the cover. Because some of the songs, obviously like One Way Ticket, travel sort of song, so it kind of came from that. Yeah, because I've always liked travelling. I've never really felt at home in one place, so I've always liked the idea of travelling and moving around, and I guess like life is like that as well, so that came from that. Yeah, well, I started off doing demos on a 4-track cassette machine, Porter Studio, and at that time all I had was an acoustic guitar, very, very cheap, like Argos electric guitar, and my brother's cheap keyboard that he didn't really use any longer. So I did demos with those, and I took that as far as I could go, and then I think I upgraded a few years later to a digital Porter Studio that had 16 tracks, and I then took that as far as it could go. But in my head I was hearing strings and brass and piano and instruments on the songs. I could hear them in my head, but I didn't have those available to me, and I can't remember how I ended up coming across that production company, but I looked into it and came across this guy who was able to provide drums even as well. I didn't have any drums or anything like that, so I came across him and he was able to provide all those things on it, so that's how that came about. Yeah, at the time it was exciting. I mean, it wasn't ideal, it was never ideal because we never actually met in person and we weren't in the same room and working on things together. But I guess that's the nature of when you pay like an outside company, you're just a client in that sense. There's not going to be that close relationship. So I was always looking for that, really, that close relationship with a producer where, you really get stuck into it. But at that time it was pretty exciting because it was a new thing for me, and able to hear my songs that way was really exciting, with drums and produced pretty well and so on. Yeah, I can definitely hear that now, but what I hear is somebody, just the stirrings of it just are happening. Like a song like Come and Go is quite a spiritual song, and I wrote that when I was 19, so I can definitely like see it there, here and there on the album, but I can also see it hadn't fully flowered at that point. So it was. I think I put that album out a year before the spiritual thing happened, so it didn't really have it fully formed on there. Yeah, I don't really know what that line means or what it was. Maybe has more meaning now, but at the time I wrote it, I can't say I was thinking of it in a spiritual kind of way. It just maybe like a desire or something. I just had something like desire in mind, like you've got this desire, but maybe it scares you as well. It was maybe a feeling like that. That's all I can say about that. Run Rabbit Run, the title came from a painting that was up in my mum's house, the house that I grew up in where I wrote the album. she had this painting up in the living room and it had rabbits on it, and I remember just like looking at it one day, and that phrase just came in my mind. The actual song, a lot of it is to do with the death of, or maybe not a lot, not all of it actually, but but the first verse and a few lines are to do with the death of this guy called Dr. David Kelly, who was like a British scientist, and he got involved in the Iraq war thing with Blair and all those, and he ended up supposedly committing suicide because he spoke out, he put out information or spoke out against it. I can't really remember the full details now, but there was a lot of stuff about that in the press at the time, and you know, he was found hanged or something, I think, in a park or something, and that was that line, "He wakes, begins to feel the core." I think that was related to him. The rest of the song has got a mixture of different things in it. Again, that sort of feeling of being scared, having a desire or ambition, but also being scared or feeling limited by it at the same time. There was that, and there was also a line about like children, which was a way I was sort of, what I was seeing at the time was that it seemed like a lot of young people, particularly kids and so on, weren't really being listened to at that time, or I don't know, I just had a sense of that they weren't really being listened to when they should have been, and that was in there as well, so it's kind of a mixture of things. Yeah, that was during the time when I'd got my first job, and then I lost it through some, what doctors called a mystery virus, mystery illness, which I later found out was a spiritual thing, like a pre-Kundalini awakening thing, but at that time didn't know other than what they had said. And so I was out of work, and then I'd met this girl, Kate, online. She was from Australia, and we were chatting a lot on the phone at that time. And I was feeling pretty down about stuff, about the way things were, and I was often taking walks, just listening to music. You know, it was at the time when I was discovering music as well, strongly, like discovering all the past music. So I think the film I'm in with the sounds I know just relates to when you're wandering around the city or wherever you live with your headphones on, just listening to songs, and you know, it's giving you some sort of hope and some sort of good feeling, and that's really all I can say with those lines. I like the title Northern Lights better. That came later, and I like the naturalness of it, and I just felt more fitting. Sometimes what happens with songs, what happens with me anyway, is that you just get a title as a kind of placeholder till you get something better, and sometimes a phrase just comes. I think Satellites, there was no particular meaning, it was just it was just a phrase that came and it fitted that part of the song, and then it just stuck, and I never really bothered changing the title. But when I came to do the One Way Ticket Lighter album, not the phrase Northern Lights came, and to me it just fitted that song better, more what it was about. So. No, that was a real life thing. That when I was like about 8 years old, 7 or 8 years old, and I was playing in my area and going to school, there was this period, I can't remember how long it lasted, a few months, a year or something. There was this period where in the area where I lived, we used to see green arrows chalked on the ground, and they would lead to like school. We would see them on the way to school, we'd see them when we were playing, and we used to follow them, and we never found out who was doing it. We always used to wonder who was doing this, and we never found out who was doing it. but we used to follow them sometimes, and they would lead to things like, I remember we followed them one time all the way around the streets into another area, and they ended with a skull and crossbones, which was quite spooky. So that was just a real life incident that just found itself in the song. Yeah. Well, I mean, at that time, I didn't know what it was about, but since the all the conspiracy stuff and skull and bones, secret societies, and things like this, I've wondered since then if that's what that was related to, but I don't know. But yeah. Well, who let the match that got us here is just another way of asking the sort of age-old question: how did we get here? Where did this creation begin? Asking those big questions. And who stole the kiss I claim was mine is from a childhood incident that I don't really want to go into in detail. But yeah, it has some meaning with a young girl. Well, both of them were written in the early stages of my relationship with Kate, but like a lot of songs, I can't say for sure if they're about a particular person or just a general feeling of love, but they were probably inspired and came out of that relationship and kind of waiting. I think it was at the time we were waiting to meet up to live together permanently, so it was just before that period. Well, those songs that you just mentioned, the first time I ever recorded them was in 2002, just as the point when Kate was coming over to stay in the UK permanently, and I was in the middle of them. I'd done about 8 or 10 songs, and I had most of it recorded, and she sang a few harmonies on that. I got her to sing a few harmonies on a couple of songs, and then we never followed it up for some reason after that. We never really sang much together. And then when it came to do the One Way Ticket album, those two songs that she sang, or those songs that she sang, I can't remember, it was 2 or 3, as a kind of nod to that first thing, I got her to redo the harmonies on it. At the time I wrote it, it was just a feeling. It was just trying to describe a feeling that I was feeling. And I think I had a feeling that a lot of people were probably feeling. That song is kind of about about it being summer and everything's supposed to be happy and joyful, and you might be outside taking part in it, but inside you feel lonely, or you feel sad, or melancholy, whatever. So I was kind of trying to describe that feeling. I used to feel that, the kind of contradiction of the summer thing, and maybe it does have more meaning now, I'm not sure. Well, the idea for the album came because I was playing out in the streets from 2016 onwards, and I was playing a lot of One Way Ticket songs, and I started playing online. I didn't have a band. When I did the One Way Ticket album, the intention was to set down a blueprint for a band sound, because I always saw myself as a band songwriter. I never saw myself like a James Taylor, or nowadays like an Ed Sheeran, or I never saw myself as the solo, sincere sort of acoustic singer-songwriter, but a lot of people seem to see me that way or try to box me in that way. But right from the start, I always saw myself more of a band songwriter, like a Neil Finn or Richard Ashcroft or Frank Healy, or you know, the Beatles, what those types of songwriters. And so when I did the original One Way Ticket album, I figured, well, I don't have a band, but I'm going to still create a band sound blueprint. But when it came to several years later, 2016, I found myself having no other choice but to play solo, and I was playing online solo, and I was playing out in the streets solo, and so I had to do the songs acoustically, and in some cases come up with slightly different arrangements of them. And because people were responding to it well, I think like people would hear me do the song that way, and then if they went to check it out online, the recorded version, all that would be there was a band version, and some people had got used to the song acoustically, so I figured it made sense to just do all those songs acoustically and put that album out alongside the original album. So that was the real kind of the main reason for doing that album. What was the question? And that's about as much as I can say. I couldn't remember if you'd asked me a specific question about a song. Well, my aim is to eventually do a combination version that combines the best of both. That I have that in mind, and I'll do that one day with real instruments and they're almost like the way I wanted to do it. If I could have really chosen to do the original One Way Ticket album the way I wanted, that's what I have in mind. I will do that someday, and it'll probably have a mixture of some of the new arrangements from One Way Ticket later, and it will have some of the new lyrics and so on, but it will have elements of the original version too. So. Well, yeah, that was actually what I was gonna add to that last question about the difference between the two and why I did it. That was, lyrically speaking, that was the reason why I updated some of the lyrics from the One Way Ticket later. I found, as I was playing those songs out on the streets and online, all those years later, I found that in some of them there was a heaviness or a feeling that didn't match where I felt I was now, and not that it was like false or nullified the original version, but just that, because I'm sure it still could have meaning to some other people, but I felt I'd moved on from that place when I wrote them, so it didn't really feel authentic to me to sing those lyrics the same in some cases. So that was the main reason for updating the lyrics to One Way Ticket later. No, I didn't think about that, and until you mentioned that, I never even made that connection with that. It makes sense now because the actual song One Way Ticket was written in Berlin at the end of a backpacking trip, towards the end of a backpacking trip in Europe in 2002, and that kick-started off, I guess, the idea for what became the album. But I didn't think couldn't have thought that would happen.